All right, guys. It's now 8:05. We got a solid amount of people here watching, so that's good. I'll get started here in just a minute, but again, this is exciting stuff. We're in Module 4 right now, so that means we're at the end of this module anyway. We'll be 1/3 of the way through the course. That's awesome. And if you'll notice now, a lot of the contents, obviously the first few modules were more around inner game and more about the mindsets and whatnot to have. And to be honest, there's still a solid amount of that in this module as well. But we are getting a little bit more, I don't want to say technical, but a bit more focused. A lot of the modules from now on will be on very specific things. So you'll hopefully get a lot out of that. And yeah, I'm happy with you guys keeping up with the homework. Seeing all the posts on the Facebook group is great, as I probably say every introduction to every module. And yeah, you guys seem to be getting a lot out of this. And there was a good point on the page today about relisting to the modules. Again, that's one of the biggest reasons we wanted to create a product like this. A lot of the guys that take our weekend seminars find that because the information, the way it's presented is so dense and done in such a short amount of time, in the sense of over a 3-day weekend, they can't pick all of it up in one sitting. And so and again, the reason why a lot of guys take workshops multiple times and they get more out of it every time. Obviously, the infield components are a huge factor there as well, probably the main factor. But you guys have a huge benefit here in that you can actually replay these modules. I do recommend it, even though it is. We were pacing these a bit better, obviously, with all the slides and stuff to make the learning as easy as possible. It's still really dense stuff, and it's still stuff that is can be benefited with repeat viewings. So we do recommend doing that, and yeah, posting on the Facebook group. If you came in late or you missed a class, you see it a week later. There's no shame in posting the homework from a previous week currently on the Facebook. We're still going to answer it. We're still going to look at it. People are still going to contribute, so don't worry about that as well. The topic today, of course, is conversations, specifically the art of effortless and charismatic conversations. It's probably one of the biggest pain points that we get from guys that seek us out to help them. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to go about approaching women. They don't know what to how to keep a conversation going. There's the dreaded, what do I do if I run out of things to say, which of course we'll answer on this module. And it's a big problem. So we're going to jump right into this. It looks like we got about half the class is attending here now, which is pretty good to start. So we'll go ahead and get started here. All right. So as I said, Module 4, the art of effortless and charismatic conversations. So one of the first things I wanted to get into is this idea of how conversations work. And if any of you guys are familiar with the psychology of the brain and the left brain versus right brain, I've just sort of laid it all out here for you guys. On the left brain, we have logic, analysis, language, mathematics, facts, computation, order, and details. And of course, on the right side, we have creativity, imagination, empathy, feelings, intuition, art, music, and facial recognition. Now, if I ask you, which side of the brain do you think is better at holding a conversation, conversing, socializing? Now, I actually don't know what most of you would say. Obviously, on the left side, we have language as a big function that the left side of the brain handles. But in fact, it's obviously maybe not so obvious, but it's the right side of the brain that is better at conversing and holding conversations. Although the left side of the brain does have language as one of its functions, it's not so much the social version of that as much as it is understanding language and the logical meaning of language, and how to enunciate and things like that, and how our brain commands our body to make the language happen, but not so much the understanding and the back and forth of a conversation. So just understand that. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because to be honest, the biggest reason guys come to us is because they think that they can create a logical system for solving this problem. They think, you know what, if I know what to say, if I know how to, if I have a script, I'll be fine. And they think that's the solution to their issue of, I don't know what to say, or I don't know how to hold a conversation. I'm going to tell you, it's absolutely not. And that can be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of guys, because I'm going to get into this a bit more. In fact, I should probably, here, let's go to the next slide. Well, before I get into that, let's cover this topic, because this is important too before we can get into that. So there's the issue of how men think versus how women think. This is something that when I get asked, sometimes on interviews or from guys after I tell them what I do for a living, or sometimes friends and family and stuff, they say, if you could go back in time after all these things you've learned about women and the differences and how attraction works and all this sort of stuff, what would be one thing you would tell yourself if you could go back in time? If, let's say, you only had 5 minutes, 10 minutes in order to teach yourself the most. It seems like a strange question, but I get it a lot. Essentially, how can I teach someone the most I can in 5 or 10 minutes? And the answer I give is explaining this to them, which is the difference between how men think and how women think. And this is something that a lot of guys don't understand, because obviously they're men, so it's hard to see it from another perspective. But we'll go over this individually here so you guys can understand it a bit better. Okay, so with men, logic equals emotion. So what I mean by that is, things are good, therefore I feel good. That's how we sort of go about our lives. It's how we communicate. It's how we generally see the world. If the logical details are good, things are going good. I got a good job. I'm feeling good. I'm in good health. I just had a good meal. Things are good. So things are good, therefore I feel good. Now the opposite of this is when something negative happens. Let's say in a conversation, so the inner dialogue you might have is, uh-oh, I said something weird. Now I feel awkward. So the awkward feeling stems from the fact that you said something weird. Okay? Now that makes perfect sense. If you're a guy listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, yeah, of course. What? I don't understand why you're telling me this. Well, the reason I'm telling you this is because it's actually the exact opposite for women. With women, emotion equals logic. So I feel good, therefore things are good. And it's, if any of you have been in relationships, if you've dated women, this is something you'll probably recognize when you think back of situations in which maybe you got frustrated. It usually has to deal with this. And of course the negative of this is, I feel weird. This is an awkward conversation. So this of course connects with the previous one. So the guy says something weird, he gets awkward. Now she feels awkward, and that makes the conversation awkward. Okay? So you see the connection there? The more you think about this, this is actually in itself a pretty dense topic that I'm not really going to explore too much in this module, just because it's not that important for this module in particular. But just understand that this is how it works. And if you think back again on any examples that maybe came up when you've really been frustrated in relationships, this usually explains it. One that I can think of off the top of my head would be, and this, maybe you've read about this or maybe it's happened to you, a girl you're dating has a dream in which you cheated on her, and she wakes up and she's mad at you, okay? And that's a good example of this, because it's not about the logic. It's not about that she had a dream and it's not real. It's that she feels like you cheated on her. So the emotion is there. Therefore, her logic is, I'm pissed at him. He did something wrong. And it's not to say that women are completely devoid of logic. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that in general, it's emotion tends to lead. And they can certainly have moments where these things happen and they have to stop and be like, oh wait, I'm being a bit crazy here, so I'll dial this back. But for the most part, this is sort of the what leads it. It's what'll happen. So just understand that going forward with conversations. This becomes a lot more important a bit later, which I'll explain a bit more. All right. So what's wrong with routines? One of the things we talked about when we were advertising this program, this course, is that we're going to teach you strategies, not routines. We've been really shying away from routines. And I just want to explain why. Because a lot of guys, they maybe can see the value in routines. And I'm actually not saying there's no value in routines. What I am saying is that it's not really necessary, and to be honest, it's not really the best way to learn. Again, routines in certain situations can be very helpful, and I still teach routines. In fact, you guys will get a couple routines before the end of this module, but there should be no reliance on them. It shouldn't be a situation in which you think, oh, I have to go talk to this girl, better think of that routine. It's something that you should use. It's kind of like, in case of emergency, break glass, use routine. So I drew this little circle here. It's if you look at this outer circle, so the inner circle is the comfort zone, the CZ there. The comfort zone, what happens in your comfort zone is, when you're going out or you're socializing, you drink, talk to your friends, stand around looking at women, and that's pretty much it. That's what happens in your comfort zone. Maybe if a girl gives you really blatant eyes and she kind of beckons you over, that might still be in your comfort zone. But then once you get in there and start talking to her, you might find yourself outside your comfort zone and things get awkward quick. Obviously, when you drink, that extends. Your inhibitions go away. And so that comfort zone extends a bit further out, which is, it's a crutch. So it's not necessarily something that I advocate using, but just understand that's what happens when you do drink, and why you may see more success when you drink is because you extend your comfort zone so that you can do things you otherwise wouldn't do. To be honest, all the fun things happen outside your comfort zone. This outer edge of the circle, that's probably what we're going to describe as being like the things we would really hope to accomplish over the course of a night. So that'd be things like getting a girl's number, maybe making out with a girl, getting her to leave the bar with you, all those sorts of things. Now, what guys tend to come to us with is this idea that we're going to give them this easy sort of extension out of their comfort zone to lead them to these goals. So all these little bubbles here would be routines. Okay, so they think, okay, well, they're going to teach me openers, so that I'm going to know what to say. I'm going to know how to open girls. Okay, so that'd be the first bubble there, attached to the comfort zone. And then they're going to give me transitions. Again, that gets me a bit further. Then they're going to give me some, comfort routines, and then they're going to give me some sexualization techniques, and then they're going to give me some logistical techniques in order to get her out of the bar. And then, bingo, I'm right where I want to be. So maybe I got her number, I left the bar with her, whatever. And they think it's this easy pattern of routines they can use where they never have to leave their comfort zone and everything's peachy. And the truth is, that's not what happens at all. The truth is, at least especially in recent programs, the routines we do teach are more scattered about within that circle. And the real skill set that you want to learn is how to navigate outside your comfort zone. We talked in my last module, not the last module, but module 2, about the 6 C's of confidence, and how courage is one of those, and controlling the voice of your head. That really is the key to getting outside of your comfort zone. And we gave you some strategies on that module as ways to do that. But just understand, this idea that you can have routines and that routines are going to help you is not a viable strategy unless you are a sociopath and you can remember thousands of routines for every possible situation that could ever come up, and you'll be good no matter what. Now, I do not advocate that. I've met some people that has advocated that approach, and they creep the hell out of me, and it's not something that I recommend. And that's what that would look like, by the way. So I don't recommend that. It's hard as hell, and you come across weird, and it's not a good scene. So good. All right. So let's deal with the first issue that comes up when we're talking about conversations. Well, the first thing that usually comes up is guys say, well, how do I even start a conversation? How do I go up and even talk to a girl? Now, the picture I used here is probably the biggest fear of guys, the fear of rejection. When they go up to a girl and she says, don't even talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. Go away. Okay, fair enough. So first of all, the reason I put this picture up, and we talked about this quite a bit in the second module as well, but understand that you're going to get rejected. That's just going to happen. There's really no way around it. You may as well accept it. You don't lose any value really by getting rejected. It really comes down to how you react to it more than anything. But people respect the guy that has the balls to go and do that. Maybe the girls themselves might. You may not win any points with them, but to be honest, oftentimes you do. I've had plenty of situations in which I've opened women that have rejected me, and then later on in the night, opened them again, and they were completely, they 180'd, and they were very nice to me. So sometimes it has more to do with the logistics, the context, the outside factors. Their friend was upset, they were in a bad mood, but now it's 2 hours later, she's having a good time, they're having a good time, things are different. So just understand that. So yeah, it never goes away. This is another thing. And again, I talked about this in the second module, but fear never goes away. You're always going to be scared to do it. Even me, even all the instructors, the best guys in the world, the fear never goes away. We always compare it to kind of like the high dive at a pool. It's, once you do it, you jump off, and, it's kind of like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then you can just keep jumping off all day long. But you don't go to the pool for 2 weeks, you come back, and that high dive looks just as scary as it did the first time. So again, you need to get up there, jump off again. If you want to get into a charismatic and conversational state, we'll talk about state more later, but the best answer to that is to do warm-ups. Essentially, if the fear is really, really, really strong, you don't necessarily need to go up and try to attract them or try to use these lines that maybe would communicate your intent. You can literally go up and just ask them questions about maybe the location that you're at. Hey guys, is this place a good spot? I got some friends meeting me here in a minute. I just want to make sure this place is going to get busy tonight and there's a lot of people. Sometimes that's enough, and people are usually polite to that. They'll answer that. So sometimes doing that just to get you into a social mood can be very helpful. So fear is based on the unknown. This is another thing that guys don't realize. The example I always use is UFC fighters. I usually ask guys, do you think a UFC fighter is scared to get punched in the face? And most guys, and maybe even you guys now, would be saying like, well, no, of course not. They're UFC fighters. Okay, sure, that makes sense. But think about it logically. A UFC fighter is getting into the ring with, presumably, if he's any good, one of the best fighters in the world. People that know how to punch to cause damage. And there's a good chance, almost 100% chance, that he's going to get punched. And he's going to get punched in the face, more than likely. And he's going to get punched in the face with the other person having the intent to knock him out. And if anyone knows how much damage a punch in the face can do, it would probably be a UFC fighter who sees, a lot of the people that he, maybe his friends and people that are, obviously also in the UFC, getting hit, getting brain damage, getting, messed up permanently from it. Excuse me. So logically, if anyone knows how dangerous it is and how risky it is to get punched in the face, it's going to be a UFC fighter. And here he is getting into the ring with someone that it is the most dangerous with, and that he has a 100% chance of getting hit by. Why would he not be scared of that? And the reason is because he's been punched in the face hundreds, if not thousands of times already. So fear is not necessarily based on logic, it's based on the unknown. It's when we go to do something and our brain says, I don't know what's going to happen here, so I'm going to panic. And this is the case when you go and try to start a conversation with a woman. You think, I don't know what I'm going to say. And this is why openers sometimes can be helpful for guys. They're kind of like a Band-Aid. Because they're like, okay, well, now I know what to say. And I can go and do that. And so just understand that. It's based on the unknown. So the more that you do it, the less scary it becomes. Now, the fear never goes away, like I said the first time, but it certainly diminishes over time. Put one foot in front of the other. Again, we talked in Module 2 about how it's the real win is just going over and talking to them. It's not about thinking of what to say. That's literally the last thing you should be thinking of when you're out. We'll get into that more in a second when we get into state. But put one foot in front of the other and walk over there. And that's all you really need to think about. Don't worry. Something will come to you. Either you're going to have something to say, and we're going to go over some strategies for that a bit later, or you're going to say something ridiculous, and then you'll learn, your brain will learn, because if you don't realize, the brain learns by avoiding pain. That's generally the universal rule for the brain. The number one rule is avoid pain. So social pain is a very real pain, and if you put yourself in a situation where you say something very dumb and you get some immediate social feedback that's negative, your brain is going to make some connections there and probably not say something that's ridiculous the next time. It'll get a little bit better at it. It's your party, be social. So one thing that I used to do that used to help me with this sort of getting over this fear, was the situation that I'm in, whether it is out at night at a bar, whether it's at a work function or another social function, a party or what have you, wherever it is that you're socializing, try to picture this. What if this was your birthday party and all your friends are there and you extended the invitations out to your friends of friends, which, there's a lot of those people you don't know, most of them, and you have a, let's say a pretty good sized social circle, and they all invited their 5 best friends each. So now you get a big bar full of people who, 85% you don't know. And how would you go about in that environment? The party is for you. It's a birthday party for you, although most people in that venue wouldn't know that you're the birthday boy, but they are there for you. But how would you go about socializing with people? Would you be that scared to go up to people and say, hey, I haven't met you guys yet. What's your name? With the sort of implication that it's your party. So you have no problem going and talking to them because whether they know it or not, they're there for you. So that was sort of the mind frame I put myself in when I was going out. I think, well, this is my party. This is, people are here for me. And, I've always said that having the ability to believe your own bullshit will get you very far in this. But the general idea was that I would just picture myself in that sort of emotional context. And then once I did that, I'd feel a lot better. And the truth is, even if you're in a bar, you may have noticed this before, sometimes the bar owner will go around and he doesn't tell anyone that he's the owner of the bar, but he'll just go up to groups and say, hey, you guys having fun? You guys doing good tonight? All right, great. And he'll keep going. People might be like, who is that guy? They don't know. But they're nice to him because they assume maybe he works there. Maybe he's the owner. Maybe he's making sure people are having fun. Maybe he's the host, whatever. So when you can take on that role yourself, it really diminishes that fear and allows you to sort of see the environment in a very different context. So just keep that in mind. All right, feeling comfortable. So I posted a picture here of a university lecture hall, and the reason I did is because there's a great story that I got. I was talking about feeling comfortable and how how awkwardness and embarrassing situations, which I'll get into a bit more here in a second, are entirely up to you in the sense that you're in control of whether or not a situation is awkward or not. And I had a student that told me a story, and he said that when he was in university, on the very first day of class, in a lecture hall, very similar to this one, he was sitting at the front row, had his computer open, and it was a hard to get in program. There was probably a couple, maybe 200 people in the class, and it was so he wanted to make a good first impression for the professor. So he sat right up front, got his computer out, started unloading his bag, and everyone kind of sat down, and the professor came out. Professor's arranging his notes, not speaking yet on his podium, and this client of mine opens his laptop, and there's just loud porn playing, like, oh yeah. Now of course he's in the front row. Everyone behind him can see exactly what's going on, and it's at full volume. He realized in that moment he could go of one of two separate ways in this instance. And keep in mind, again, this is the first day of class. No one knows who he is yet. So he thought to himself, I can be weird porno guy for the rest of the year, maybe the rest of my university education, or I can own this. So obviously there's giggles and laughter kind of starting to sneak up now. So he turns around, faces the class, big shit-eating grin on his face, and he says, oh yeah, guys, don't worry about it. That's just my startup sound. Does that every time I start Windows. Everyone laughs. And, the guys behind him are kind of giving them the thumbs up. Because, to be honest, obviously as guys, we know, that could have happened to me. That could have been me. And that guy handled it well. And he solidified his reputation at that point as being, kind of the smart-ass guy who maybe it was an accident, but he totally owned it, and no one thinks less of him for it. And he remembers that moment. The guy was in his late 30s now, and he still says, I can remember that moment with utmost clarity, and it literally, that was a fork in my life where I took one path instead of the other, and it changed me, and he still remembers it very clearly. So you have to understand that the logic, again, going back to the logic versus emotion, the logic of that situation from a male perspective was that this is really embarrassing. This is incredibly embarrassing. But I'm going to choose to not feel embarrassed by it. And when he chose not to feel embarrassed by it, the situation was not embarrassing. And the reason why that is because men and women, although men use logic to dictate their own emotions, when they see others, because of empathy, we tend to go on their own emotions to dictate the logic of what they did. And that's why that worked, even for men and women in that situation. Anyway, feeling comfortable equals acting comfortable. Now, the reason I put this down is because, and again, we're talking about conversations here. Think when you talk to your best friend, or maybe even doesn't even have to be your best friend, any of your friends, and you can, let's say, invite them over, or you go hang out with them, and you guys can just do stuff together and hang out, and it's not awkward at all. At any point when you're with your friends, or maybe your family as well, do you think, oh, what should I say next? What is the next thing that I should say? You might think of it, a couple seconds before you say something, just to make sure. Everyone's got a little bit of a filter, even amongst their best friends. But you're not really going over what you're saying, thinking, I hope this is the appropriate thing to say. You don't care because you're comfortable, and that's sort of what I'm getting at here. The advice, and we'll probably revisit this little this old adage several times throughout these modules, but the advice that your mom and your sister and your female friends gave you, that just be yourself, that's the idea here. When you're feeling comfortable, you're acting comfortable. And again, in module 2, we talked about seeing being the audience, not the show. That's sort of the idea here. You need to put yourself into a comfortable state. Again, we're going to get into this a bit more, but just understand that when you actually are comfortable, everything you do becomes comfortable. You can say weird things, you can make mistakes, you can spill drinks on girls, sometimes several times if you're me. You can say things that you would think if you heard someone else say it, oh my God, that was offensive. But as long as you're comfortable and your emotion is that, that wasn't a big deal, then it isn't. And that is the truth. And that, again, goes back to the emotion equals logic. If you can control your emotions, you can control the logic of the situation. Again, very, very, very important when you're conversing with people. You need to be able to control the emotions. That's how you create a vibe. All right, we'll get into all these things more, but I'm just laying these out for now. Embarrassing situations are up to you. So again, using that example I used in the university lecture hall, whether or not a situation is embarrassing is entirely up to you. It's not a logical thing. There's certain things. Actually, this is something that happened to me. When I was in grade, I think 3 or 4, I was playing outside on the slides, and I slid down the slide into a mud puddle. My pants got all wet. It was the winter, so it was kind of a big deal because it was cold. And I went inside, told my grade 3 teacher, grade 4 teacher, whatever, and she gave me a pair of her husband's pants, which obviously I was in grade 4. I'm already a small guy. Even my current size, they probably would have been huge on me, but they were massive. So she had a rope, but just tied them around like a rope, like Huck Finn. And anyway, so the kids were maybe teasing me a little bit for wearing huge pants, but it wasn't a big deal. But middle of class, the teacher asked a question, and I stood up to answer it. I didn't realize the rope had gone loose, and so I stand up in front of the class, and my pants fall down, and I'm wearing tighty whities. Everyone laughs, and I laughed too. And I realized I was kind of a class clown, but I realized in the moment that one, it was funny. And 2, being embarrassed about it isn't going to help anything. That's going to just make it worse. And so I just took my pants and threw them away and said, I don't need these anyway, and just kept talking. And everyone just went into a fit of laughter. Not that funny in hindsight, but the realization is that I just owned the situation in grade 4. So the idea here is that it's really how you decide to feel in the moment that dictates what the situation is. And sometimes, you can go up to a girl and you can say, let's say an opener that we gave you, or that you read online, that someone said, oh, it's a great opener. And maybe when you go up and say it, you just feel like you just said the most embarrassing thing. Like, oh, they're going to know I'm using a line. And the girls look at you like you're a weirdo, and they reject you. And then you think to yourself, well, damn, I thought this was a great opener. What the heck? Maybe this isn't for me. And the truth is that it had nothing to do with the opener and had everything to do with the emotion that you were communicating to them in that moment. Women are exceptionally good at reading emotions, and they will read your emotion, whether you like it or not. So just understand that that's what's usually happening, which can be incredibly frustrating for a lot of guys learning this, because they think this is the reason why a lot of guys take our courses and they say, oh, this isn't for me, because they get these bad reactions and they think, oh, I guess this just doesn't work for me. And we got to tell them, no, look, it's going to take you some time before you're able to control your emotions enough to be consistent with this, because you have no reference experience. There's no exposure therapy going on here. You need to get used to this so that you can be comfortable. Again, going back to the fear thing. So just understand that the more you do this, the more you practice it, the more you understand and think about the fact that, you know what, the fact that I'm uncomfortable right now is making her uncomfortable. It's not what I said, it's not the words that I use, it's the way that I feel. And that's what you need to realize. That should be the big takeaway here. Stop caring you have nothing to say. This is the other thing. The reason a lot of times guys run into issues is because they think, oh, what am I going to say next? What should I say now? What side of the brain do you think you're using when you start thinking these things? Now I have to think of something to say. Well, that's the left side of your brain. You're being analytical, right? You're trying to figure out something to say using the language side, as your catalog of words as opposed to the meaning of the words and the emotional context. And when you do that, you force yourself into the left brain side of thinking, and that's not very good at building a connection with people, and it's very good at trying to problem solve. But in this case, since it's a social problem, it's not going to be able to solve it. And so you're catch-22. So the issue here is stop caring. Instead of thinking, what should I say, and trying to think of things to say, just think, I don't know what I'm going to say, and that's okay. That's fine. And you just smile and accept the fact that you're going down that big dip in the roller coaster. So you may as well enjoy the ride. Smile and enjoy it. And the truth is, when you can do that, the situation ceases to become awkward. And I think I have another point on this coming in later on in the presentation, but I'll say it now anyway. It's worth repeating twice. Running out of things to say and not knowing what to say does not make women uncomfortable. What makes them uncomfortable is you thinking to yourself, I don't know what to say next, and then you get uncomfortable. That makes them uncomfortable. Not the fact that you have nothing to say, but the fact that you're uncomfortable because of it. So just keep that in mind. Those of you that maybe have researched me a little bit, or you saw my Keys to VIP video that came out, almost 10 years ago. There's a good example of this in that video where, I opened those girls with, hey, you guys look like a bunch of retards. And the girl says, that's really rude. You can leave now. And I don't really react to that. I just keep talking as if what I said wasn't rude. She looks at her friends don't seem to react, and I don't seem to be caring that it was what I said was rude. Therefore, the reality to her is that, oh, I guess I was wrong. The emotion here is that it's comfortable, so I guess it is comfortable. And she used that. Now, if that was a guy, and it was a situation, and maybe I said something rude to a dude, do you think that would work out the same way? No. I'm going to say something rude, the guy's going to be like, you're an asshole. Get out of here before I punch you. And if I talk to his friends, and his friends are like, whatever, okay, he's not going to be okay. He's still going to be pissed. He'll probably hit me. So this is the difference between guys and girls. Anyway. All right, so another quote by Bruce Lee. I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee, if you guys didn't realize yet. So this is, I think, probably my favorite Bruce Lee quote ever. There's a lot to this. So let's just read through it here. I'm moving and not moving at all. I'm like the moon underneath the waves that ever go on rolling and rocking. It is not I am doing this, but rather an inner realization that this is happening through me, or it is doing this for me. The consciousness of self is the greatest hindrance to the proper execution of all physical action. There's this concept called flow state that I think is kind of what he's referencing here. And anyone that functions with a high amount of skill, whether it be artists or singers or actors or athletes, they all talk about how when they're really in the zone, as they call it, at least athletes do, it doesn't feel like they're even doing it. It feels like they're channeling it. It's going through them. I'll really get into this in more depth when I do the my module on the body language module, the art of movement. But just understand that it's when we're conscious of what we're doing in the moment, that's actually the worst thing we can be doing, and especially in a social sense, because we really need to sort of engross ourselves into the emotion of the moment as opposed to the logic of the moment. So it should not be a consciousness of self as much as it should be sort of a recognition of sort of you being in that moment and killing it, doing well. So, and I especially like that part. It is not I'm doing this, but rather an inner realization that this is happening through me. So you allow it. You're in a positive mood. You feel good. You're talking to a girl, and you think this is going great. I'm going to allow this conversation to just happen. I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to try to control it. I'm not going to try to think that what is the best thing to say. I'm going to let it flow. And I'm going to smile and accept that that's what's going to happen, and it will. And that's the weird thing about this. I've been in situations, and again, I'll talk more about this in a sec here. Actually, I think it's the next one. Let's just talk about it. Let's get into state. All right, state. So a nice picture here of Miles Davis on the left here. Great musician. He's obviously, if you're not familiar with Miles Davis, he's a jazz musician. And the reason I put him on here is because jazz, as a musical genre, is very much the musical version, I guess, or the musical definition of state, in that it's not really logical at all. I mean, obviously it takes a tremendous amount of musical knowledge in order to get to a place where you can, successfully do jazz music with a jazz band. But to be honest, when they're doing jazz, it's all improvised. It's not, they recognize obviously certain things, and if they work a lot together, then obviously that it's not as much as improvised as it could be. But a lot of the times, I'm actually not sure if Miles Davis did this. I think he did. I know Van Morrison did it on one of his albums, where he actually used musicians that had never worked together before. And I think Miles Davis did this too. But the idea was that I think it was Kind of Blue, which was one of the greatest reviewed albums of all time, and especially the greatest jazz album of all time, was done on the first take, I believe. And the idea is that it's when you get into that state where you just feel the music and it just comes out of you, and you sort of become aware of the other instruments, and it becomes part of this big sort of tapestry that you're all contributing to. And I'm not a musician, so I struggle with the words and the definitions and ways to describe this accurately. But the idea behind it is one that I think is very familiar to me, especially when it comes to socialization, because it's something that I see all the time, in that my best work, in the sense of maybe the most wittiest things I've ever said, or the most clever things, or the things that maybe a guy would listen and be like, oh my God, that dude has sick game, were all done off the cuff, on the fly, improvised. And they're things that sometimes, if I'm in that proper state, women will say something, maybe they'll say a barb to me, and I'll come back immediately, right away, with something that if I took 2 weeks to try to think of the best comeback, I wouldn't come back with something as good as what I said in that moment. And even after I say it, sometimes I think, oh my God, where did that come from? That was amazing. And it's like the words didn't even formulate in my head. My lips moved and they came out. And it's because I was in that state where I just believed in that moment that what I was about to say was going to be the best possible thing I could say, and because of that belief, it was. Strange. I can't really explain how that happens, but I know that every single person that does something that requires a certain amount of skill, that having that level of improvisation can affect it, says the same thing. They say, they do their best work when they're improvising. I think it was Michael Jordan said the famous quote, I know when the ball's going in before it leaves my fingers. And it's absolutely true. It's more about a mental state. Obviously, muscle memory and practice and things, that's going to enable you to get there. But once you're there, that's what it really comes down to. All right, so let's talk about state. Being in state. Okay. So one of the things I always tell guys is that, and this is obviously how we become really great conversationalists, it starts with state. You can't be a good conversationalist if you're in a logical frame of mind. If you're in your head, you're never going to be a good conversationalist. And for those of you maybe listening thinking, hey, when's he going to get into talking about actual conversations? Well, I am. This is the biggest part of it. Because you can't have a good conversation if you're not in the right state. It just isn't going to happen. And I'll explain this a bit later on. But the idea here is that you need to get in state. All the instructors with love systems, the one thing they're really good at is controlling their state, because that's what it takes to be the person that can be on every single night. When we go out with guys, and these guys obviously paying a good amount of money, we can't have off nights. That can't happen. So we need to know, when we hire instructors, for instance, that they can control their state, because that is the biggest thing that determines whether a guy has good game or not. The biggest, if he can handle his state consistently. Because everyone has on nights, everyone has nights where they do well. Even the worst guy that's ever taken my course, he's had an on night. I'm sure you guys have all experienced this. It doesn't even necessarily need to be in talking to women. Sometimes it's in other things. Maybe you're playing pool and you sink 6 shots in a row and you're just feeling it, and maybe you're not even a good pool player, but it just happens one night. And you're like, man, you can just feel it. You're on, right? Then what happens? The next shot comes up. It's a big one. Can't miss this one. The pressure's on. Excuse me. You get inside your head a little too much. All of a sudden, that emotional state turns logical. You get to your left side of your brain. You're thinking, oh, wait, better make sure the angle, better make sure the feel, better make sure the force I'm going to hit it with. You fuck it up. You overthought it. And that's, a failure of state. Because state is not controlled by the logical. It's controlled by the emotional, the right side of your brain. You need to be in the moment. And when you force yourself out of that thinking that you're going to help yourself, you obviously don't. So let's talk about ways we can get into state. I think that might be the next thing. All right, anyway, it's not, but we'll get into that. Getting into state, ways you can do it. So listening to music, watching funny movies, or YouTube videos, talking to people. I mentioned earlier, socializing gets you into state. And sometimes it means before you are going to the event or the place where you're going to be social, being social on the way there. Go into the store, get a pack of gum, talk to the person working the store. It doesn't have to even be a woman. Who cares? In this module number 2, I talked about how you should talk to everyone that you expect to meet, again in your life. So if you're in your neighborhood, hopefully you've already talked to these people. Go and talk to them, stop into the convenience store. You maybe know the person. Stop into the restaurant, grab something to eat really quick. Stop into the bar on the way there, talk to the bartender, maybe some locals, whatever. Get into a state. Go by your friend's house, or better, a female friend's house, and talk to them for a little bit. But that's the easiest way to get into state. If you're already out, just do some practice sets. Do some sets that you don't care about, that you can just burn through in order to get yourself into a social state. Maybe it's talking to guys. Maybe it's talking to some girls that you otherwise wouldn't be interested in, but happen to be there and looking to talk to someone. All that stuff works. Other ways, talking to your friends. If you're out playing games with your friends, I'll get into banter stories in a later module when we get into the humor and improvisation. But just having little inside jokes with your friends that you can do is a great way to get into state. Again, I'll explain more of those in a following module, but essentially it's funny games and things you can play while you're out that just force you to stop seeing everything so seriously. So sometimes it's pretending you guys are in a fake band, or pretending that you guys are you guys are dairy challenge champions. You can chug milk, 4 liters of milk without puking. Just dumb stuff that you guys can just do to basically, bullshit with people in order to entertain yourself. Those are all great ways of getting in a state. Obviously, drinking is a pretty. It will get you in a state, but it's at the cost of affecting every other aspect of your game. So you're gonna, if you drink too much, obviously you're gonna come across like a drunk. It's gonna get awkward. So I don't recommend drinking to get into state. Sometimes drinking a little bit can help. So having a shot or two is fine, but just don't go overboard. All right, the next one. Stop caring. You have nothing to say. Accept it. Relax. So this goes with what the Bruce Lee quote was kind of getting at. There was another quote that he talked about. It was the way to be one with the disease, the way to be rid of the disease is to be one with it. I think I mentioned that in the second module as well. The idea here is that you stop just caring you have nothing to say, and you just accept it. And by accepting it, it makes it not happen. So you'll actually find that you can actually say things, and conversation comes a lot easier when your brain is not focused on trying to think of something to say. Because your brain can't just go numb. It can't just go it can't go blank. So when you just stop giving it the negativity, it's going to start thinking about something else. And normally, if you just let it flow, you just sort of relax, it's going to naturally be able to get into any sort of conversation that presents itself. And of course, like I said, getting into that state is the easiest way to keep a conversation going. So we'll go over some strategies in a little bit here, but just accept that. State reset. Okay, so this is something I do when I find I'm not in state. So, and of course it happens to me too. It happens to all of us. we lose our state sometimes while we're out. I do what I call a state reset. And the idea behind this is focusing on the external as a way to avoid thinking internally and avoid getting inside my head. So what do? So I think, okay, what does the bar smell like? What does it look like? What is the music playing? What is the expression on the girl's face? What is the what does the music sound like? All these things. Again, I think I might went over this in Module 2, but just understand that that's a great way to get back into state so that you can actually get outside of your head again and be a lot more in the moment. Oh, I'm there. Don't be the show, be the audience. Again, so I already talked about that. But yeah, don't be the show, be the audience. Again, you're going looking for fun. The point of a conversation is not to get something. It's not because you want her to like you. It's just to have fun, to entertain yourself. So I guess So I guess that is what you want. But the idea here is that it should be mutual. It shouldn't be just a selfish thing. It shouldn't be I'm just doing this for me. Obviously, you want some interaction to be there. You want to get to know them a little bit too. Again, I'm going to go over this a bit more in a sec here. But the idea here is that it's all about just the positivity. It's not about a need or a want. It's just about you enjoying meeting people. All right, be interesting. All right, so I got a picture of Anthony Bourdain here. I was trying to think of a good example of someone who is interesting. And I didn't want to use an obvious example because I think that's something that people, if I said George Clooney or, Tom Cruise or something, everyone, that's the first thing that comes to their mind anyway. I wanted to use a different example. And I find that Anthony Bourdain is a good example because what it really comes down to, and I think it might be the first point here. Yeah, what are you passionate about? It really comes down to passion. You're automatically interesting when you're passionate about what you're talking about. And Anthony Bourdain, I'm not really into cooking. I can't cook for shit. But when I watch, Without Reservations, and I see Anthony Bourdain traveling, and he's talking to these people about food and these complex foods and things, I couldn't care about the food. But what's really interesting is how passionate you can tell Anthony Bourdain is about these topics, and he makes it interesting. He makes me want to listen to him and want to care about these foods. And the cool thing about Anthony Bourdain is he's not really stuck up and pompous about his food knowledge, and he doesn't have that air of what do you call it, like highbrow kind of looking down on lower forms of food. Like, he has episodes that revolve around food you can get in vending machines and fast foods, and his favorite like stuff you can get at 2 a.m. on a Saturday kind of stuff, which is not something you see very often with those types of hosts or chefs. So it's interesting hearing him talk about vending machine food, something that no one probably cares about, but he talks about it with such a passion that it's interesting. So just understand that. You ask yourself the question: what are you passionate about? One of the things that I actually don't know if I put it on as homework, but it definitely should be homework, is try to think about what you're passionate about and look for more things that you can learn and become more passionate about. For me, I know that if I get into a conversation with a girl and it turns to music or film or traveling or writing or wine or bars, man, there's a bunch of them. I know that I'm going to have a great conversation because I know enough and I'm passionate enough about those topics that I could talk forever about them. And that's the idea. It's the same reason why you can talk forever with your friends, because probably what you're talking about is something that you care about. Either it's something that your friend cares about, therefore you care about it because they care about it, or it's something that happened to you that you care about, or something you share. So this is what makes conversations automatically become interesting. You should start, like I said, working on this. Nothing is worse or more boring than a person who, a woman mentions something, let's say she's like, oh yeah, I like your shirt, Led Zeppelin is like one of my favorite bands, and you say, yeah, cool, me too. That's it. But that kills the conversation. There needs to be something more to it. And there's so many opportunities for this. The more that you learn about things, the more you realize, and again, we'll do some exercises of this at the end, that this it's a massive thing. So here's the other thing. Become passionate about meeting new people. This is something you can all do. Everyone has different passions. So whether you're into, film or music or sword fighting or drinking or wine or whatever, that's all going to be, personal to you. But the one thing you should all be passionate about is meeting new people. That's automatically going to make your conversation more interesting. If you're going up to talk to someone because you genuinely want to see what they're like, because you just have a passion about meeting new people and sort of understanding people, that's going to be communicated. And that's actually going to be picked up by them. And the emotion they're going to get from that is, oh, he's being real. He's not saying this because he knows it's the thing to say that leads to a conversation that he might get laid with. He's saying this because he genuinely wants to know. There's a big difference there. And again, as guys, we might not see it because we're so obsessed with logic, but from a female point of view, it's black and white. They can see it. They'll know a guy that is actually being real versus a guy that's not. It's night and day. So just understand that, that if you can become passionate about meeting new people, and again, I don't care if she's like a 4 or a 3, everybody is interesting. Everybody is. It's like those, you guys ever watch Star Trek? I don't know if I mentioned this in the other module, but if you guys watch Star Trek, they always have the, okay, we're going to go down this planet. Chris Shepard always uses this example. I get this from him. But yeah, they're always like, oh, we're going to go on this planet. All right, Spock, Bones, and you Ensign number 1 and 2 go down. And, those guys are going to die because we don't know anything about them. We don't care. We don't care if they die. And that's the thing, is that when you get to know people, they automatically become interesting. Nowadays on TV, they're like, if it was the same example, you'd, just before Ensign 1 and 2 went down, you'd see them having flashbacks of their wife and their kids and kissing their 3-year-old boy goodbye. I'm going to come back and see you in 6 months, don't worry. And then he dies, and you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad, because you know something about him. He becomes real. So that's something you need to realize when you get to know people. You automatically become more. You automatically find it interesting. There's no one you'll meet that is, if you get to know them, you're going to be like, yeah, I don't really, I wish I never got to know them. Well, actually, that's not true. You probably will, but most times they're interesting. What is a connection? Okay, so you ever hear a woman talk about this? You ever hear a woman say, "Oh, I went on a date with this guy and we just had a connection right away"? You ever wonder what that is? What is this connection? How do I do it? I know I used to think that. Girls would say that. It's like, oh, we just had a connection. Fuck, I mean, what is that? Is that just being really good looking? And the girl's like, wow, he's really hot, we have a connection? And the more that I got into this, I realized what it was. Having a connection is basically speaking with someone without wearing a social mask. So everyone puts on masks, when they're out. They're not really them. They're bar version of them. This is especially true with girls. Reason being, obviously, I mentioned this in Module 2, about how women have a lot more at stake in social situations when they mess up. So they put on these masks. And as guys, we put on masks, but our mask isn't how do we save face in case something embarrassing happens. Our mask is, I have to put on the I want to get laid, so I shouldn't be myself mask. I should be cool version, really proper, super interesting version of me. And you put on that mask. And then you got 2 people wearing masks. What you should be doing, and how you build a connection, is to get her to drop her mask as soon as possible, and you just never wearing a mask. You're always going to say what you mean. You're always going to say things that she might not agree with. You're going to say things that come up to, that come up in your head as you're talking. You're going to call her out if she says something that's a little bit safe, or a little bit like a person wearing a social mask would say. You're going to look in her eyes and try to see if you can get a real emotion out of her, to see if you guys can have a connection in that way, the sense that you laugh at the same thing, or you say something that she responds to. That's another thing girls do. You might say something funny and then she finds it funny, but she tries not to laugh. That's the mask, right? So you gotta get that off. That's what a connection is. So when you can take that mask off, and all of a sudden you guys are speaking as 2 real people, like 2 friends would talk to each other, that's how you get a girl interested in you. Literally, that's what I do. Every time I go and talk to a girl, my number 1 motive as soon as I get in there is get her mask off. Because I don't care if she's a bona fide 10. Because to be honest, the bona fide 10s, the Victoria's Secret looking girls, their masks are thicker than anyone else's, and they're way more apparent. If you can get them to drop them, what you'll find is underneath that mask is the same girl that's behind the, that's the 6 or the 5 or the 7 or the 8. They're all the same. And that whole, giant wall that you think you need to climb in order to get a 10 attracted to you disappears, because all of a sudden it's just a real girl underneath. And that's what you got to realize, you get that mask off. That's how you do it. And that's what having a connection is. So stop wearing a social mask. Be yourself. Again, the way to be yourself, stop being scared. Stop thinking that you should have a perfect thing to say. Accept the fact you have nothing to say. Become cool and collected, like I mentioned in Module 2. And accept that negative things might happen, but that's okay. Accept them. And that's the way to sort of just be yourself. Make statements. Okay, so this is like a conversational strategy. And this relates to being interesting. A lot of guys make the mistake of going through 20 questions. They say, oh, so what do you do? Oh, you're a veterinarian. Oh, cool, yeah, awesome. Must be a cool job. Like, you like animals, right? Yeah, cool. And so like, what are you guys up to tonight? Like, what are you guys out for? Oh, cool, awesome. Yeah, you guys can have an accent. Where are you from? Oh, yeah. So they go the 20 questions thing. That's really boring. Here's an easy way to make it a million times more interesting. Instead of asking questions, make statements. You can ask the same questions, but just make them statements. So, what do you do for a living? Wait, let me guess. You are I think you help people. You got kind of like a save the world kind of vibe. So you're, what are you, like a veterinarian or something? By the way, you can basically lump women into 3 different categories, at least most of them, for what they tend to do for a living. And this is actually kind of true for men too. But what the 3 categories are usually like, okay, so they either help people, which is a great way to describe it, because it really, can you think of one job right now that you couldn't say helps people? It pretty much covers all jobs. But anyway, they help people, and what I really mean by that is like the health industry. So, they're veterinarians, or they do aid, assistance, or assisted living stuff, or they're nurses, or they're doctors, or whatever. And then you got like the more like sales aspects. So they'll be like sales and marketing, and those. Oh, by the way, you can tell sometimes what they do by the way they act. Girls that are a bit like nice and polite and warm tend to be people that help people. People that are a bit more cutthroat, a bit more aggressive, a bit more confident tend to be like sales and marketing, or like like fashion or things like that. And then you have women that are a bit strange, a bit goofy, and those tend to be artists. And those are the ones that, or they're like they may work in maybe a regular job, but they're aspiring artists. And you can usually guess those just by talking to a girl for a couple minutes, at least when you get good enough. But make statements. So instead of asking what you do, say, so what do you do? Let me guess. So what are you guys up to tonight? Let me guess. You're picking up boys, you're getting drunk, and you're taking care of these 2. But when you make statements, you automatically become a million times more interesting. And the reason why is because a woman's sort of main thought in her head when she's out is, the reason why they get all dressed up, spend all the time getting ready, is how are other people seeing me? And what is, the way that I'm arranged, the way that I've dressed, the way that I've put myself together, what does that say about me? And so when you say things and you make statements, it hits on that, and you automatically become incredibly interesting, because that is the exact question they want to know. Why did you say that? What is it about me and the way that I presented myself that made you think that? That is the most interesting thing to women. So you can use that. So yeah, their job, what they do for a living, where they're from, why they're out, all that stuff that you normally ask, just turn it into a statement. Trigger words. All right, so this is the last piece we're going to go over today before we get into homework. And trigger words is something that you can constantly do. It's going to be a big piece of your homework. Essentially what it is when you talk to a woman, you're conversing, there's certain words that will come up in her answers that you can use to bounce off of into new sort of new roads of conversation, new pathways to get to different conversations. So we're going to do this. I'm going to give some examples here. So the first one. So how do you guys know each other? And the question I'm asking isn't really that important. It has more to do with what she says. So she says, oh, Amanda and I have been best friends since university. She's in town visiting and we decided to celebrate. Okay, so let's say she says that. Okay, so what are the trigger words in there? What are the words in which you can use to jump off of? Now you may be thinking, okay, well I can see 2 of them right away or something. There's I see 2 of them. But the truth is there's probably a lot more than you think. Here's all the trigger words. Okay, so there's like 4 on this one. Maybe even 5. Amanda. I always use names as trigger words sometimes. If there's nothing else, sometimes you can just use the name. It's kind of weak, but sometimes it's something as simple as Amanda. Every Amanda I've ever met has been trouble, and I doubt you're any different. Something like that. You can say that for any name. Anyway, but here we go. So Amanda and I have been best friends. Okay, so been best friends. So normally what I'd use for that is I'd say something like, you guys are best friends? You guys like best friends like you've been best friends since you were kids, or is it kind of like you met in university and you're best friends since then? Well, I guess she says in this, so we've been best friends since university. It's okay. So that kind of answers the question. I got to help myself here. But if it's best friends since university, in that case I might say something like, have you guys kept in touch? That's awesome. And did you guys live together in university? It was kind of like forced best friends where you guys were living in dorms together. Oh, that's crazy. I don't know how I even managed to get through that part of my life. Blah, 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 blah. Again, that's a whole different conversation you can jump into. University. Where did they go to university? What did they take? Maybe when was it? It might be a pretty weak path you could take with university. But again, all these things, by the way, are going to lead to more trigger words, right? So if you say, oh, what university was it? What did you take? And they say, oh, I went to Penn State. We took medicine. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you grew up there. Maybe you know something about medicine. Maybe you don't. But there's a bunch of different avenues you can take once you're there. She's in town visiting. Where is she from? How long is she in town? Oh, that must be great. You guys get to actually reconnect and stuff. Has it been a long time since you guys last got together? So what's on the agenda tonight? What are you guys going to do? Are you guys going to, do it hard tonight? Or is it mostly just like a nice, easy night of talking and not too much drinking? And the last one, we decided to celebrate. Again, that goes with the last one. Really? So you guys are celebrating tonight. All right, so what's on the agenda? You guys do shots yet? Well, we got to do shots. Obviously, shots are in order. If this is a university, if you guys haven't seen each other as a university. So those are all the trigger words. All right, let's try another one. So again, how many guys have hit on you tonight? That's what you're going to say to her. Haha, not too many. There was one guy who basically stared at us for 10 minutes before coming over and asking us what we're drinking, then leaving. Okay, so this is a different kind of response, a different thing that she might have said. Here's all the jump off points, at least that I saw. Not too many. Okay, so I might call them out on maybe the not too many thing. Not too many. So just one. Eh? That's sad. You guys are the hottest girls in here. I don't understand what's wrong with these guys. They must all be shy. I'm not shy, obviously. So I guess I'm the only one winning here. Something like that. That's a bit cocky, but that'll work. There was one guy. One guy could be like, one guy, it wasn't my buddy Dave over here, was it? And, kind of smile. It doesn't even have to be a guy there. You could just point to, or you need to say, like, oh, let me guess, it was that guy. And then point at the, 85-year-old dude in the corner sipping his whiskey or something. Next one, stared at us for 10 minutes. What would I say for that? Oh, I'd probably say, he stared at you guys for 10 minutes? That's my move. He's totally stealing all my moves. I got to meet this guy. He's obviously knows a lot more than I do. So again, using a little bit of self-depreciating humor. Before coming over, I might say, did he have a really good saunter? Was he like, when you guys watch him come over, we were like, damn, this guy's totally getting our number tonight. Did he just own it? Did he have like a great walk? And then they'll probably laugh and be like, no, he looked so embarrassed. He looked like he was scared of his mind. And asking us what we're drinking is the next one. Yeah, what a lame thing to say, ask you what you're drinking. That's crazy. So what are you guys drinking tonight? I might say that, again, being self-depreciating. I might again, maybe reference the same thing I said for the stared at us at 10 minutes thing, where I'd say, like, asking what you're drinking. Again, he's stealing moves out of the player's guide playbook. That is a great line. That has never failed me. Ask what a girl's drinking, and then go home with her. Works every time. And then leaving. So leaving, I would probably say something like, did he have like a really good exit? Was he like, did he say like, all right, well, it's great meeting you ladies, and like do like a cool flourish and like spin around and then walk away? Or was he mostly just, he was in the conversation and you look back and he was gone? So again, maybe making jokes a bit. So that's that one. Let's try another one. So what's on the agenda today? Okay, so this would be more of like maybe a daytime kind of approach. Maybe you stop the girl on the street or something, maybe going somewhere. And this is maybe, of course, this isn't something you'd open with, but maybe something that just comes up as you're talking to her. She says, oh, I just have a bunch of errands to run. Oh yeah, so what's on the agenda today for errands? She says, well, I have to get my best friend a housewarming present, and then I have to figure out what I'm going to wear tonight for the party. Okay, so have. Okay, so why did I underline this? Oh, okay. I have to get my best friend. Okay, so you have to? Is this like a real best friend? Or is this like, actually, no, I guess that's the next one when I talk about my best friend. So half, I'd say, so like, do you really have to get presents for housewarming things? I mean, isn't that basically just an excuse to have a bunch of people over and drink? I mean, pretty much you just bring liquor, right? Is that the idea? What are you going to get her? Talk about that. My best friend, that's where I'd use the one I was just about to say, which is to say, all right, is this like your real best friend? Or is this kind of like you kind of met her a couple months ago and now she's having a housewarming party and it's going to be a pretty awesome party, so you're going? Again, or maybe if the fact she said best friend probably means she's a good friend, so I might say something, oh, I see you guys been really good friends for a while. It's just like her, her first house that she's, renting or buying or whatever. Housewarming present. You're like, see, that's a really hard one. Like, I'd actually say this to a girl. See, housewarming presents are hard. Is it like, what do you get? Do you just get her like a bottle of wine, or does that make it seem cheap? Do you get like a vase? Do you get like a centerpiece? Like, what do you do? What are you thinking? And maybe she's like, I don't know. I was thinking like maybe I was gonna get her this or that, and then you talk about those things and whatever. And then she says, then I have to figure out what I'm going to wear tonight for the party. And I'd be like, you know what? I think what you're wearing is great. You look perfect. If you wore that, I would be like, yep, that's you nailed it. Or maybe just ask her what she's thinking. So what are you gonna wear tonight? Just like pajamas, sweatpants. Just go real easy, real low investment. Really make a point when you get there. Make a statement. So this is your house, but now it's my house. I'm wearing sweatpants, getting real comfy. For the party. So what kind of party is this? Is this going to be like you, her, and like maybe 2 other girlfriends? Or is it going to be like a big kegger? Like, should I get on the horn here and like invite all my friends? Tell them where this is at. We got a massive keg party here happening. Again, I might tease her about that. That's it. Let's try one more. You guys look Canadian. Where are you from? Again, that could be used anywhere. It could be used at a social function. Could be used at a party. Could be used at night. Could be used maybe not in the daytime. Maybe if it was like something in a park or something. Canadian. I'm American from Boston, and Carly's from Ireland. We're basically just here for work. So one thing you can do, a really easy way, I'll just highlight the trigger words here. An easy thing you can do is always have something to say about countries and places, because they're really easy. You should have like a stereotype that you can draw upon for every place that you can think of. And if you can't think of anything, that can actually be the stereotype. So I mean, I've had women, like I've been in Europe, and they've been like, oh, I'm from Liberia or Uzbekistan or something. I'm like, I actually know nothing about that country. You're literally the very first person I've ever met from that place. So what goes on there? Is it just like fields, something like that? But obviously here, Canadian, I might say you shouldn't bash Canadians. They're very polite people, and I think they're very attractive. So it was a compliment. And also, you guys look like you really like maple syrup, so that's why I said it. So shoot me, Or American. Obviously, if the context here is a bit important. If you're in the States, that might not be too big of a trigger word. But if you're not, if you're in Europe or Canada or in Asia or Australia or something, that might be something. You say, oh, you're American, and from Boston too. Again, I would probably just go from, if they say both, I'd just go for the state of the city, since that you can get a bit more targeted there. But if they only say that, oh, she's American, I would probably just say something like, right, so Americans, so you guys are pretty much, I'm Canadian, so I'd probably say you guys are like Canadians, except you are a bit more aggressive and you know less about the world, specifically where countries are. And maybe tease them. That's kind of harsh, actually, if I just said it like that. But I'd probably soften it a bit and basically say that I like them, because we're basically like brothers and sisters. But again, here from Boston. Okay, so she's from Boston. You're from the East Coast? You're from Boston? Oh my God, say car. Again, because people from Boston is like car. Get in the car. Go down to the shore. Ask them if they know Matt Damon. Ask them if they have like a boat, if they're like a fisherman. I don't know if that's so good for Boston. But yeah, I'd mostly make fun of their accent and ask them if they know Matt Damon and tease them about that. And Carly is from Ireland. Again, Ireland. So again, all these locations, obviously, if you're not in the place they say they're from, you could obviously ask why they're there. And I know she says, oh, we're basically just here for work. And you say, oh, so I guess that's what you jump on with that one. But so Carly's from Ireland. Okay, cool. So you guys work at some international company, obviously, if you guys are from different places that you're here for the same thing. What is it you guys do? Let me guess. Again, using statements. And then, if she's from Ireland, again, if you know things about Ireland, whereabouts in Ireland are you from? And she says, oh, I'm from, Donegal. Oh my God, Donegal's amazing. I was up north and surfing up there. You guys have like some of the best surf in the world. It's kind of a hidden gem. And, maybe she says something about surfing, maybe she surfed, and the whole conversation happens, and all of a sudden her other friend is kind of like, oh, these two are hitting it off, and that turns into a conversation that turns into something else. And the last one, basically just here for work. Again, that's a good. I already mentioned making statements about what you do, what they do for a living, and going from there. Okay, so trigger words. So here's the thing. You can do this with anything. So what I want you guys to do, and this kind of just leads into the homework here. What I want you guys to do is do trigger words role plays. You can actually do these on the Facebook group if you guys want, or share them. Think of maybe conversations you had with women that maybe you didn't know what to say next. So it was like, okay, she said this, and I didn't know where to take the conversation. And there might be hidden trigger words in there that you didn't realize when it happened. They're everywhere. And once you start seeing them and you start practicing them, you get a catalog. For me, one of the reasons I'm really good at keeping a conversation going is because I've done it thousands of times. So that when a woman says something, and from a guy's perspective, he might say, oh, I don't know where the hell you go from here. And I got 5 things that I know off the top of my head that I can jump on because I've had that exact same response so many times. I know where to go. So it really does help to practice these and write them down. If you're out or you're socializing and someone says something and you're like, wow, I don't know, I have no idea where to go here, write it down or remember it and think about it. Try to underline the trigger words and create some jump off points that you can do. I know that one of the exercises we used to do was write every state, if you're American, every state that's in the U.S. and think of something funny you can say about all of them. So something you can tease them on. Something you can say about it, Oh, you're from Nebraska, so like you probably really love cheese. I'm just making this up. I don't even know if Nebraska makes cheese. I assume they do. Anyway, but if you can think of something for every single state, I know probably most of them. I'm not even American. That's going to be, super helpful in the States because in the States, American people don't necessarily travel as much as other places do. So if you're in the States, you're going to meet obviously a lot of Americans, and yeah, that's always something you can jump on. But do some trigger words. I'd like I said, put them in the Facebook group. You guys can analyze them. Put something up and be like, I couldn't find any trigger words in this, or the only one I could find is this. You guys see any other ones? But start practicing. It's great to share them with each other because, again, you guys will notice other ones that you may not know. And if some of you guys know some things about different things that you can throw in the comments, like, hey, if they mention this, you should say this because people that know about this always find this really funny. So maybe you teach someone about something they wouldn't have realized. That's really helpful. And there are little things like that can make a conversation go from, oh, this is just another boring guy to, oh my God, this guy's super interesting just because he said some small thing that really turned this whole conversation around. This happens to me all the time. The example I always use is Australians, or a lot of different nationalities, but Australians because they have so many little things they do that are nowhere else in the world do they do them. And so sometimes I'll have students be like, oh yeah, I just talked to this girl, she was Australian, and she's really mean. And I'm like, oh, where is she? And I go and talk to her, and I was like, hey, you look Australian. And then she might say something like, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, nice line. And they're like, oh there, Sheila. Why don't we grab a couple of VBs, get our youth there, pull a couple of doughies, go up to Brizzy, get a couple of feral lads there, and grab a couple of Sheilas. And just use this complete hodgepodge of different Australian slang words that all in a row, and they just you literally see in their eyes, it's like their head explodes. And they're like, oh my God, are you Australian? That's amazing. How do you know all that? And they just flip out. And all of a sudden they're jumping on me, they're hugging me, and they love me just because I know 10 different slang words that they use in Australia. And that's it. That's all it takes. And I literally can mess up the rest of the conversation and they'll still love me. So that's what I mean when I say these little things can be super helpful. So again, play with these on the Facebook group. I'll jump in too. Obviously, Chris and the other guys helping us out with the Charismatic program. We have an endless amount ourselves. So we can definitely give you some if you guys can't think of any yourselves. Practice state resets. So again, another thing, start doing this when you're out. You're feeling self-conscious. You're feeling inside your head. Practice state resets. Smell. Use your emotions. So smell, taste, hear, feel, see. Use all of them. What colors, what the music sounds like, what the air smells like, what it tastes like, what the girl looks like, the way she smells, all that stuff. Use that as a state reset to get yourself. One thing that I would do too, I don't know if I use this in the other module, if I explain this, but I'd say to myself, you know what? At 37 years old, 33 years old, reasonably good health. I'm going to look back on this time as one of the best times of my life. This is awesome. I'm having so much fun. I'm out with my buddies, or I'm at this event. Look how much fun everyone's having. I can't wait to meet people. And you just get yourself into that state. Again, you can use the other examples I use where it's like, it's your birthday party. Everyone's there for you. And then just look around and man, all my friends brought so many people. This is great. I have such awesome friends. All these people are here for me. And then go and introduce yourself. Hey, I don't think I met you guys yet. What's your name? You can literally just say that. Sign up for improv class. Massively important. I want all you guys to do this. And then write on the Facebook group. Talk about it. Be like, hey, I signed up. Here's a place. If any of you guys in Chicago, go here. Second City. If you're in LA, the Groundlings is really good. Go here. If you guys are in certain cities or certain countries where there's places, or you sign up for them, mention them on there. I know that I think a big portion of our class is American, so that'd be very helpful. But enroll. The good news is that a lot of girls take improv classes, so it is a good way to meet women as well. But this will teach you how to actually be a good conversationalist in a lot of ways. I'm actually going to go over improv in a future module in comedy, which I'll actually have some exercises and stuff that if you guys do when I'm taking these improv courses, you'll probably recognize. But very, very, very useful. I actually competed nationally on an improv team before I even got into all this, and that's what really, I would say, helped me get as good as I did so quickly, is because I recognized that it was exactly like improv. You're basically thinking on your feet, trying to be interesting, trying to be funny, dealing with the fear of not knowing what you're going to say and what you're going to do, and having to basically perform in that environment. So it's very good. So sign up for that. All right. So I will open this up to questions now. If you guys have any questions, feel free to load them up. And sorry if hold on here. I'm gonna put this over. All right, I'm gonna put the camera back on me. All right, guys. So hope you guys enjoyed the module there. Let me just bring up the chat here to see if we got any. All right, so I see Chris has been commenting here. Blake C. liked my Australian accent. Good. Been practicing for a while. And I'm glad, I'm assuming you probably understood everything that I said too. Grab a couple of ABs. If you guys have any questions, mask equals defensive shield. Yes, essentially it is. I think it's definitely a defensive shield in a lot of ways. Essentially, is what it is that it allows them to sort of exist in a social environment without really wearing their heart on their sleeve or putting themselves in a situation in which they can be damaged or hurt. Chris said, dive in attitude that everyone is interesting. It's my job to find out what it is. You'd be surprised. Yeah, he's right. Absolutely. And everyone is interesting. Ranvier, Chris Derrick, unrelated question. What are good places to do day game in a place like Toronto when it's a bit too cold outside? Don't go to the Eaton Center because you'll get kicked out. They made it illegal there now. Normally, places... Here's the thing. When it comes to day game, and people disagree with this, but I don't like going out with the idea of going out to day game because I feel like it communicates a vibe. When you're going out to do that, like that's your motive, women can sense that that's the reason you're out and the reason you're talking to them. Instead, what I'll do is I'll say, all right, I'm going to go out to Kensington Market to find a cool coat or a new shirt or a new pair of pants. If I see a pretty girl, I'm going to talk to her. And that's what I do. So I go out, and Kensington Market is the answer to that question. Is a good place I like going out to. Even when it's cold, bundle up. There's enough places you can stop into. Stop. If it's later on in the day, stop at Ronnie's for a pint or something, or any of the restaurants or bars there that they have in the market. But just go out to do something, and then if you see women that you find attractive, then you just talk to them. But yeah, other places in Toronto, Chris can jump in there if he knows many places off the top of his head. When it's cold, inside places, yeah, I mean it's tough. You're not going to get kicked out of Eaton Center as long as you're not, ping-ponging around the room talking to girls. If you just go there to do something and then you happen to see a girl and talk to her, no one's going to know. But if you start bouncing around the whole place, then they're you'll catch on pretty quick. Any other questions? Keep them coming. Girl was talking to mentioned she was traveling and she just wanted to have fun. Does this mean she's open to hooking up? I mean, context is pretty important there. But yeah, I would say that's most likely. The thing is, women won't usually spell out their sexual availability. It's not something they usually do. And if they do it, it means 100% yes. In fact, it means you should take them right then. Like don't even think, oh, I better, get this conversation, fired up and whatnot. Be like, cool, yeah. Well, here, let's get out of here. Let's go grab some wine. I know this cool place. Take her by the hand. Don't search her face for permission. Just walk. And then when you get outside, be like, wait, come here. And then just kiss her. And then you can go from there. Examples of getting a woman to remove her mask. I do a lot of this with like my face expression. So this is a bit of a tough question for me to answer. But there are some verbal ways to do it. A lot of to be honest, what I'll do when I say face expressions, what I mean is she'll say something that I can tell is her putting on a mask because she's doing a front. And sometimes it's like them being judgmental. Sometimes it's them not fully opening up. So they're not really opening up to, let's say, I say something like, yeah, so what are you guys up to tonight? And she says, oh, nothing. Like she's not opening up. I might be like, cool, that's an interesting answer. What about you guys? Maybe tease her a little bit. Even that might be too much. But I'll just let them know that I understand what they're doing and I'm being myself. And so I find it a little bit disappointing if they're not being their selves. And I'll tease them a little bit until they open up. And, and if they keep doing it, if they're like, give me short, curt answers, and be like, wow, you really don't like me, do you? I can tell. Is she always like this, guys? Geez, this is like, you guys are a tough crowd. And I'll just talk to them as if I'm just trying to get to know them and be social. And as if that's the reason why I would be weirded out that she's not really being herself. And I mean, normally the way that you talk and the way that you act and that comfortableness you have about yourself is what gets them to open up. So it's actually not so often if you do have a lot of experience with this that you get those really hard masks. And oftentimes when you do, sometimes a compliment can get them to open up. Sometimes they're the hot one and you're not paying enough attention to them. And so as soon as you start paying attention to them, they open up. And again, jealousy sometimes. You're talking to their friend, they like you, so they give you a bit more shit. There's a number of different things. Darren says, I like what trigger words are. That really opened my mind for keeping the conversation flowing. But if I keep that up, I feel like I might be talking their ear off, maybe. Yeah, that's the point. Would you think that, that's essentially what socializing is. And again, this is hard to understand from a male perspective because we think, why am I talking if I'm not solving a problem, getting information, creating a solution to something? Yeah, that's solving a problem. Anyway, but it's hard to see. But the idea here is that women talk to each other to get to know each other better. It's not so much the content necessarily. It's the act of speaking together. So yeah, you will be talking their ear off, but that's the point. And as long as the conversation is interesting, it doesn't matter. That's why people go out to bars, to be social. That's why people go to parties. That's why people go to social events, is to be social. So you get to know them and you share positive feelings with them. And that's what it is. Sometimes it's talking, sometimes it's just looking. I've had lots of situations where I'm just talking to one girl and the other girl in the group is looking at me, maybe from across the table, and I look at her and just smile and hold eye contact with her, and she's smiling back, and we're having a conversation just with our eyes. And then I walk around the table, I'm like, hi, I'm Derek. And she says, hi, I'm Amanda. And although we just said that, a whole conversation already took place. And when you can do that, that's sort of like when I talked about state and how like emotion equals logic and all that. That is what I kind of am getting at, is that controlling the emotion. So the emotion in this case being, in this example being, we're both really attracted to each other, and me going up and just saying something is basically filling in words to create an opportunity for us to continue this and make it go further. I'm going to talk more about this when I talk about the art of movement, specifically about subtext, because that's what it really is. But that's the idea. All right, this was awesome. Good. Yes, you should watch some more of those, more of these. Awesome. Any other questions, guys? I don't see any more. All right, guys. Well, we cut a little bit of time off this one. It's good. We're not going 2 hours anymore, just an hour and a half. So that's good. Again, thanks for listening, guys. Really appreciate that. Again, keep the homework in mind, and I'd like to start seeing some of these trigger words examples on the Facebook group. I'd also like to hear your maybe some of your state resets that you guys end up doing, and how it played out and how it worked for you. And of course, information about you guys joining improv, and maybe some examples of how it went for your first class and whatnot. I'd love to hear back about that. So put that on the Facebook group and the Charisma Decoded group. And yeah, until next time, which will be this Monday for module number 5. So thanks a lot for listening, guys, and I will talk to you soon. See ya.